Welcome to Rauta, I'm Jerry, and this time we have some Finnish black metal for review. This is Vargrav, like the Finnish name would say it, the Finnish way of saying it is, and this is the Nighthold, the third album by the band. Before we take a look at this digipack, let's first tune in for Metal Archives for a little bit background information which you really need to know, should know, or all that stuff. First of all, there are a couple of Vargravs out there, both playing black metal. This is the Finnish black metal band, so hence we push that button. And here you have the other basic information. Started in 2015 by one-man Vakeus. That sounds like a vacation. Also known as Ville Palonen of Asakal, the original drummer of Asakal and a guy of many bands. As a session member or solo artist like Druid and Forest and all that stuff. But also playing in contemporary bands like Grieve. Used to play in Marras and all that stuff. Very veteran of the Finnish black metal scene. Played in lots of bands since the 90s. Then we have newer members. Since 2020, we have Werewolf of Satanic Warmaster and a bunch of other bands doing vocals. His signature style, which is definitely not for everybody, but those who like it, love it a lot. And then we have drummer from Moonsorrow and other bands. And of course, Trollhorn, also known as the mentor of VK, doing guitars and bass. So quite an all-star lineup if you really think about it from the perspective of Finnish underground metal or Finnish black metal or what have you. Fintroll, Moonsorrow and a bunch of other bands on his chest, and then some other bands for Mr. Tarvonen, the drummer. This is quite a lineup, what you would expect else but quality. I guess nothing else but quality. But we have to understand that whatever is going here started with the Chaos solo project back in the days, meaning that basically the two first albums were more or less his solo ventures from 2018 and 2019, already quality work among symphonic black metal, something which is mentioned here on Metal Archives as well. Now, because of it, I'm guessing, because of the lineup changes or additions, I guess we should say, Nighthold took 4 years instead of year 2, as opposed to the first albums. But here we have that right there with some almost 60 minutes of black metal and also some soundtrack. Now let's get back to the physical form of the world, and here we have this nice looking digipack released by Werewolf Records, which is then again, of course, Mr. Werewolf's label. So you see, connecting the dots, and this is basically all you need to know about Finnish black metal scene. People know each other and they collaborate with one another, and that's the beauty of it. Cool people. I mean, these all are cool people, and they're doing music together, which is a fantastic thing. So as you can see, this is pretty nice looking digipack. With some nice details, some nice graphics, kind of an old school vibe. And if you're now thinking of some fantasy games, I'll share you an anecdote or two in a bit. But first, we'll take a look at this CD, which is not your typical black and white, but pink. There might be a story to be told about that, but let's save it for another day. And of course, then we have this rather timeless, rather 1990s kind of a band photo with guys having their fantasy weapons and robes and, well, cosmic space right there, and even lightning bolts. I mean, you could say there's a little bit goofy thing, but then again, knowing these guys, yes, it's a goofy in a way that we can respect and treasure. Why? Because these guys, much like me, have nerdic background. Well, we're all gamers, first of all, let's keep that in mind, and we have always been fascinated by things that are not your mundane, everyday things. So when you see a wizard hat and a bone in hand and what have, like, people would be like, okay, that's not very metal in the sense of traditional beat metal or heavy metal or whatever, but it's very wizard-like, and that is something that, like said, we share in common interest in fantasy literature and movies and gaming. Now it's worth mentioning, I guess, and there's a reason for this. For example, Trollhorn and VKs are both avid World of Warcraft gamers, much like I used to be, the greatest video game ever. And these are something that, really spark the imagination when you're writing songs. I mean, besides taking the obvious guitars and what have you, besides taking your basic keyboard, kind of a thing, you just go like overboard. So rather than calling this symphonic black metal, I would say this is soundtrack black metal. Now if that puts you a little bit off, or like, what the hell does that mean? Just listen to the final track, Ghostlands, fully instrumental track with beautiful landscapes. I'm talking about metaphorically here. Metaphorically, I mean musical landscapes. It's beautiful soundtrack thing. Might be even the best track on this album. If that doesn't really lead you to the world of Warcraft and other places, I don't know what would. Now, when I was reviewing back in the days around 2018, the first album by Vargrav, I was thinking like bands like Dark Space and Limphonic Art. So definitely more in the cosmic and also symphonic layers of black metal with lots of space themes and what have you, lots of symphonic elements. And now I feel like this is paying as much homage to World of Warcraft and other gaming soundtracks as well as early Emperor. I would even go as far as to say the Nighthold is between Anthems and In the Nightside Eclipse, but topping Anthems, in my opinion, not as far as though as In the Nightside Eclipse, which I think is the peak moment of symphonic black metal, or keyboard-oriented black metal anyway. Keyboard-driven even. But this isn't that much keyboard-driven, even though the keyboard parts play a big part of the music here. I mean, there's certain very, very early to mid-90s atmosphere all the way down with this album, and it's done in a fantastic way. Listen to the drums. They're like perfect sounding for this kind of music. They're filled with details, but not going overboard. Now add some interesting guitars, some interesting synth parts, and then you have those screamy trademark vocals, and things start to fall in place. To me, this is beyond your typical symphonic black metal. It's not the Dimmu Borgir big mega orchestrated thing, but it's also beyond the scope of what In the Nightside Eclipse had going, where Anthems is more and more going to some kind of a progressive and symphonic black metal with Emperor. This is more like, okay, we're not going that far. We go a little bit different direction and add more soundtrack elements to it. And as such, the outcome is here with the Nighthold. I think this is close to the peak moment of such things. But then again, it's a little bit too cheesy even for me. I mean, I love soundtrack music, but I'm not that big in the ways whatever like Emperor is doing with their stuff. That is, I do love In the Nightside Eclipse. For the other parts, I mean, it kind of went too far. I mean, outside the territory of traditional black metal for me. The Nighthold knows when to push the brake button or pedal, and it's just like, okay, we're not going to that far. And instead of, going with Anthems and whatever Emperor did after that, this is more like, okay, instead of doing lots of clean vocals and all that stuff, let's go with the soundtrack stuff. And I think it works better. So if you ask me, yes, this beats Emperor in most of the matches right there. And even if it's not able to, beat In the Nightside Eclipse in its own game, it's quite close to it in so many ways. Lots of that interesting stuff is happening here. It is nicely executed. I can only wonder what will happen next when these guys hone the whole thing to the next level. I mean, what VK started, I think the rest of the band kind of honed to a different level and changed the style. So not exactly clear improvement as such, but more like changing tone and figuring out, recalibrating basically the whole concept. And as such, I would say this is more like a soundtrack black metal versus symphonic black metal. And while it caters roughly the same needs, I would say this is a little bit like a subgenre of a subgenre, and very good at that. So I'm hoping the guys to achieve the next album after this one. Now, if I caught your interest with this album, obviously you should know that CD and other versions are available, like digital also. I don't know what's the story with the LP. Will there be one? And with which point? But CD and digital are out there. So in case I got your attention with the physical copy, this is the way to go through Werewolf Records. Go for your symphonic soundtrack black metal with Vargrav and you won't be disappointed if you like the style to begin with. Now off you go, check out the music, links are in the description box. Bye bye.